So good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining today's webinar. My name is Matt Jones. I'm an Associate Director at Penna, and as a PPMA Premium sponsor, I'm delighted to be hosting this session on an important topic that we are naturally very passionate about at Penna. This session will focus on the London Borough of Sutton's entry to the Best Talent Programme, which was sponsored by Penna, and for which Sutton were highly commended at the People Management Awards earlier this year, which I can't believe was April, and we're in October now, so that's time is flying. If you have any questions, as Charlotte just mentioned, please just pop them in the chat, and hopefully I'm sure we'll have time to facilitate a short Q&A. So without further ado, I'm delighted to now introduce our lovely presenters from the London Borough of Sutton. Emily Nice, Assistant Director for HR and OD, and Dawn Matthews, Head of HR, Shared and Traded Services. So over to you, Emily.
Thank you so much, Matt. Dawn and I are delighted to talk today about our approach at Sutton to developing and delivering a tailored co-designed talent programme. So what we will talk you through now is what we did and why. Our starting point was that reviewing the information from our workforce data and staff survey results, we could see that there were improvements to be made around our career development. With this in mind, engagement was undertaken with a range of stakeholders to understand and assess what colleagues would benefit from in a career development programme. It was vital to us that we ensured fair access to the programme that we would design. So this programme has become a key part of our learning and development programme, but we're particularly going to focus and tell you about today about our aspiring programmes, so aspiring leaders and aspiring managers, which were developed and delivered in-house by our HR and organisational development team, sponsored by our Strategic Director for Environment, Housing and Neighbourhoods. In order to develop this programme and to deliver it, we've had strong support and participation from all members of our corporate management team, so the Chief Executive and all the strategic directors, as well as the leader of the council and senior leaders across the council. We launched the programme first in September 2022 as a pilot. With its success, it's rapidly become a core part of our learning programme, and we're currently running cohort 5 of the programmes. So what our aspiring programmes are seeking to do is to provide a safe space for colleagues to explore the role of a manager or leader within the context of local government, to help them build confidence in their personal brand, to overcome personal barriers or any imposter syndrome that might be holding them back, and to build connections with senior leaders through mentoring and allowing them to hear career stories from our diverse senior management team to give a more detailed understanding of the human side of leadership and not just those professional and technical specialisms. So to ensure fair access to our programmes, we took a bold step to enable applications to be submitted without line management approval. Instead, they're reviewed by the programme sponsor, the Head of Organisational Development and the Strategic OD business partner. We've prioritised applications from underrepresented groups, and we've seen a steady increase in the number of applicants from Black, Asian and multi-ethnic backgrounds since cohort 2 and 3. So Sutton's approach, we feel this is quite different because we have harnessed the whole council to invest time in the career development of our workforce. We've taken into consideration in the design of our programme a sustainable and cost-effective method to support career development by drawing on our internal talented leaders. We've enabled colleagues, particularly from underrepresented groups, to access and join a programme designed with their experience of career barriers in mind and strategies to overcome barriers that they may encounter. Participants hear career stories and have access to leaders from across the council. Both our participants and senior leaders value the connections that they build with colleagues who otherwise would likely be unknown to them due to where they sit in the organisation. So we're moving across departmental boundaries, across work location boundaries, and across existing networks. So these new networks have been forged amongst the cohorts who meet periodically to continue to support their ongoing career journeys. Ahead of launching our programmes, we engaged with our staff networks to hear what they thought would be beneficial to their members. We initially designed only a leaders programme, so for aspiring leaders. However, feedback from our staff network informed us that there was a need for a manager's version, so for those staff who were thinking about their next step into management. Our chief executive and strategic directors were engaged on the content, and they were asked themselves to deliver some aspects of the programme. So examples of their involvement include our chief executive attends and delivers part of the first module, and she helps participants understand the role of being a leader within local government and her own personal journey. The leader of the council, who until recently was Councillor Ruth Dombey, shares her political career journey and her experience of leading a council. The head of committee services raises awareness of the council's governance structures and how to manage the relationship between officers and members at senior leadership levels. Our strategic directors and assistant directors provide keynote presentations on their career journeys and the life experience that shaped them. Myself, as the AD for HR and OD, deliver a module on presenting, networking and preparing for interviews. Dawn, as the head of shared and traded services, delivers a module on overcoming barriers, sharing her lived experience, and then facilitates a session around imposter syndrome. Our heads of service across the council collectively agreed to mentor participants on the programme, and we found that this has delivered some lasting relationships. And all of our strategic directors, including the chief executive and the participants' mentors, listen to a final presentation that they give at the end of the programme to share their experience and hear about their career legacy ambitions. I'm going to hand over now to Dawn, who's going to talk you through some of the impact that we found from the programme.
Thank you, Emily. So, as Emily says, I'm going to speak about the impact for attendees and some of the positive feedback that we've had from members of the various cohorts. So since the launch of our Aspiring programmes, a total of 76 participants have concluded our Aspiring Managers and Leaders programmes, 40 and 36 participants respectively, which makes up about 6% of our workforce. We started with a pilot programme, and 33% of our pilot cohort received a promotion within a year of completing the programme. We've conducted 45-minute interviews with the pilot participants to understand what their experiences were like and to help us develop each programme further. And some of the questions that we asked them and tried to find out about was how the programme has helped them to develop their leadership skills and knowledge, and any specific examples of how they have been able to apply the learning in their current role. We also sought to find out and ask them to provide specific examples of how their participation in the programme has led to positive outcomes for Sutton Council, how the programme has helped them with their career planning, and how the programme has influenced their career aspirations and goals. We also wanted to find out how the programme helped them to build their professional network and what were the biggest challenges they faced in sharing what they've learned from the programme with colleagues and the wider organisation. Some of the themes that came out from responses following these discussions was that all participants reported that they feel more confident in their leadership skills. It's helped some participants recognise that they are already a leader and can actually facilitate change. Some reported a better understanding of the organisation at a strategic level and how their role and team fits into that. The programme has helped to demystify leadership by exposing them to our current leaders, and it's also provided participants with the time to reflect, which many found really valuable because it kind of gave them time away from their business as usual and their day job, and they were able to sort of step back and reflect kind of holistically. The programme gave one participant the push to move roles internally, which is really encouraging, and participants are now actively contributing to cross-organisational groups and helping to influence and shape policy across the council. They've said that they've had increased confidence when talking to leaders within the organisation. And I think that's because some of the sessions that the leaders do with participants, they're really relatable. And they also have a greater understanding of themselves and others. They've also reported greater conscious career planning, so being more intentional about their next steps because they've got this newfound confidence and this understanding of the sort of strategic issues and what leadership really means. And they've also increased the building of their internal and external networks. The session that I've been facilitating on the Wheel of Power and Privilege has helped them to recognise their privilege and look out for others more, be more attuned to how others are being treated and how they may be feeling. Some of them have acted as mentors for our Aspiring Managers programme. I'm also a mentor for the Aspiring Managers programme and the Aspiring Leaders programme. And they've reported that they felt invested in by the organisation and glad that they invested in their own development. This has demonstrated a positive culture at Sutton, which has aided retention. All have acted as ambassadors for the programme, referring others, and it's normalised the conversation around imposter syndrome. I'm just going to read a couple of quotes from some participants. One said, "I had a real light bulb moment during one of my mentoring sessions. Also really interesting to ask questions and hear from other people and how they've got to where they have in their career." Another participant shared, "It was a fantastic, empowering course. It has given me greater confidence as a manager and would recommend it to any aspiring leaders." So for us, that's really positive feedback. So in terms of sort of some tangible results, whilst many of our participants have gone on to promotions, we've also seen greater access to exciting projects that they have been identified for through their participation in the programme. In Sutton, through our Aspiring programme, we have greater succession planning and an identified pool of talent that we are utilising across our transformation programmes. An unintended impact of the programme is the increased visibility of our most senior leaders. Their authentic approach has inspired each of our cohorts, and our leaders have truly been inspired by our participants. A true testament to the success of the programme is the appetite from our members to want to be involved and invest their time in our programme. Finally, it is our belief that the managers and leaders of our organisations will be inclusive in their approach, having experienced a programme that gives a focus to looking both inwards and at your own experiences and how they influence the shadow you cast on those who you manage and lead. We are committed to continuing this programme at Sutton. We've also had feedback from attendees that they are astonished and feel valued by the active and visible commitment of our senior leaders, and that this will remain with them through their careers and make them advocates for Sutton as a borough and as an employer. Thank you. That's me.
Thank you both. Unless there was anything further, Emily or Dawn, I was just going to look at the chat actually. So, have we had any questions? So, Alla, I don't know if you wanted to come in, but Alla's asked, could you please, thank you for sharing, Dawn and Emily. Could you please let us know how long were each session? So, how long was each of the sessions, and how often did you run them?
So each of the sessions is a half day long, and there are 6 sessions as part of the programme. So we run it over broadly a 2-month period, so you have a little bit of momentum while you're on the programme.
Fantastic. Anna, did you want to come in? I see you got your virtual hand.
Yeah, great. I was going to say presentation. It is a presentation in a way, isn't it? Yeah, thanks very much for sharing your story. Great work, Sutton. a question around, I suppose, your talent pooling and your succession planning. So when somebody's been through the programme, do you then prioritise those delegates for future leadership roles, or is it then up to them to source and locate those roles when they become available and apply for them? How does it work?
So through the mentoring relationship, we have the linkages with senior managers. What we also do is we track all of the people who've been on the Aspiring Leaders and Managers programme. So over those 5 cohorts, that's about 70 people, and a third of them have moved on to progression roles.
Yeah.
So we track them, we map them, we go out and work with them. So Dawn mentioned we have a transformation programme, and we've just run a series of events called Ideas Fest, where we engage with our workforce to hear what they thought we could do to make efficiencies and improve the way we do things in the council. So we had one of those sessions specifically for the alumni of the Aspiring Managers and Leaders programme. Equally, at the same time, we've just reviewed our Pride values, which is the council's values, and we held a session to speak to the aspiring managers and leaders to hear what they thought about the culture of the council, the values, and how that would shape our new behaviours framework. So they're a really valuable asset to us, but also they can feel that now, having been part of the programme and put themselves forward, that they're part of our community to develop.
Yeah, and the more opportunities obviously coming their way based on what you've just spoken about. Great, thank you.
Rebecca's asked, you mentioned you're on cohort 5. How many members of staff are on each cohort?
So there are a capacity of 12 on each cohort.
For Louise, they're flooding in. How do you decide which applications to accept if people are submitting without manager approval?
So our Strategic Director Environment, Housing and Neighbourhoods is the sponsor for the programme, and he reviews the applications. What we're finding is that it was a bit of a leap of faith to not have line management approval. But what we've found is that the only issues that we've had from managers in terms of them being happy to release their teams is there might be more than one person on the team who's put themselves forward, which would create service delivery issues. So we've said, well, for example, we'll take this person on cohort 3, the next person waits till cohort 4, and that has worked. And equally, HR colleagues review the level, because for aspiring leaders, we want someone to be in that management space already. So we've had some applicants for the leaders where they don't have line management responsibilities, so we've moved them onto the aspiring managers. Or equally, if someone's more senior and they've applied for the aspiring managers, we'll put them on the aspiring leaders course. But actually, it felt like a leap of faith to us in terms of opening that up. It hasn't proven to be a barrier, and it's proven to be really helpful for staff perception that it's an opportunity that they've got control of.
Finally from Kate, were sessions full days? Where did you deliver sessions to enable that opportunity to reflect?
So the sessions have been half days, and we've delivered sessions as far as possible in our main office. There is a real synergy and opportunity to network that you have seeing each other face to face. There are a couple of sessions where for logistical reasons we've had to do that remotely, but largely it has been face to face.
Fantastic. Oh, Rachel, another hand.
I think I can talk now. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Hello, everyone. Great presentation. Thank you, Emily and Dawn. It's really great, I think, from a recruitment perspective for us to hear, there's some great succession planning, great aspirant programmes. And I know all 3 of us have benefited from all of that in our careers as well. I wanted to just ask around the strategic relationship with having kind of the will, want and desire of individuals to better themselves and to progress and have that self-development, but also strategically align it to some of the priorities around some of the areas of the workforce that maybe have an ageing workforce, isn't diverse at that strategic level, those more senior strategic levels, and how you cross-tabulated some of that data and maybe some of the relationships in those worlds that maybe it wasn't as seen as a priority to develop teams, because sometimes the challenges that they might leave and move on. So how did you kind of pull all of that together to make it a strategic programme and tackling some of those areas that maybe are underrepresented or have ageing workforce issues or just people in post for a very long time?
That's a really good question. So in terms of the applications, we review all the applicants based on their protected characteristics, the area that they work in, and the department that we work in. What we're looking for is a mix across the council. Given the range of services that are hard to recruit, we found that there has been a good range. So people in planning, people in finance, people in social care. The real, Dawn talked about a kind of unintended consequence of senior managers becoming more visible. What we've really found as well is children's social care colleagues have really benefited from the programme. And at first, we had difficulty persuading children's social care colleagues to attend. And then a couple of colleagues attended the Aspiring Leaders programme, and actually the last cohort the majority was in children's social care. So they've found that a really useful tool in terms of strategic progression, that they understand the organisation and that wider organisation in an area where you typically feel more affiliated to being a social worker rather than a Sutton Council staff member. But equally, it's a hard to recruit area and a hard to retain area.
Thank you.
Fantastic. No, I love some of the themes that were coming out of the survey, Dawn, you mentioned, particularly around, I suppose, confidence in their own leadership skills, which, if we think about succession planning, it's so crucial at the moment. But I was just quite interested to know, actually, myself a little bit. So you mentioned about having your chief executive involved kind of early on as part of that first module, which naturally is going to help. But I wondered if you were able to elaborate a little bit more, I suppose, on how you managed to get that senior buy-in, I guess, from the breadth of the organisation, and embed that change really across each directorate, which is kind of leaning on from what Rachel was saying. Everyone's quite different, and so to almost move away from that silo approach. I wondered if there was anything you could. Appreciate some of this doesn't happen overnight, but I wondered if you could elaborate on that.
I can answer that. So I think you're right, Matt. It doesn't happen overnight. It's been a lot of work in terms of engaging with the senior leadership team. So as Emily sort of said at the beginning of the presentation, we looked at the data and what was that telling us in terms of, did there appear to be sort of glass ceilings for certain members of staff in certain areas, etc. And that was quite crucial in terms of developing both of the programs and bringing that to our corporate management team, which is chaired by our chief executive. So bringing it to that forum, we also spoke to our trade unions as well and members at our CEJCC. So getting buy-in from the very top, explaining what the data is telling us, kind of giving a narrative around, well, what will happen if we don't put some interventions and some initiatives in place? And here came the various programs. So that's where they were born. And I think because we did that engagement from the very outset, we had the sort of evidence base to back it up, etc. It made that buy-in a bit easier. I will say that Sutton, I think most staff that work at Sutton would also agree that it really is an organisation that's committed to developing staff, EDI, etc. It's not just lip service. We actually do a lot of work in that space. So I think in some ways we were kind of pushing at an open door. We came up with this sort of idea. It was quite readily accepted, and then we just had to make it happen. And as I said, we started with a pilot, and from the feedback from that pilot, it was really positive. We have seen, some people going on to kind of, getting promotions within the organisation. I think sometimes as a senior leader myself, sometimes getting that kind of next step, some of it falls down to confidence or a lack of confidence and not kind of believing in yourself. And I think with these programs, it's really helped participants to kind of gain that inner confidence, especially as I alluded to when I was speaking earlier. hearing from senior leaders. You know, senior leaders tell their stories of their journeys, and they're very frank and they're very authentic, and it's very relatable to a lot of people. And I think that gives people a bit of a boost to think, well, actually, if they can do it, I actually can do it as well. And the organisation supports staff to do that. So it has been a journey, you know, but I think that's kind of how we sort of navigated the whole thing, and it's been successful. As Emily said, we're on cohort 5 now, so it's been very successful.
Fantastic. I think we've got time for one more. Oh, apologies, Kate, I missed your one just then. So Kate said, how do you recognise those who have been through the programme in terms of celebration, reward, recognition to the rest of the organisation? Have any gone on to further development as part of their progression via accredited learning, as well as being part of organisation transformation projects?
So we have the presentation at the end with the chief executive and the strategic directors, and they're thanked and celebrated in those sessions. We have our annual staff awards, and the cohorts who've been through the learning programs are recognised through that, as well as being brought into those development discussions. And where the relationships have been built and people have particular skill sets and interests, they're drawn into more specific projects. So the chief executive has worked with some of the cohorts in terms of work that she's doing. They've been drawn into some of our transformation programs. So as Dawn said, our chief executive is so open to bringing in and being very generous with her time for our workforce. We're really lucky in that space. So we're finding that there is a lot of natural celebration as we work through the programme.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, both. I think we're just out of time there. Well, actually, perhaps, Rachel, I don't know if you wanted to come in, actually, just very quickly. Future plans for growing this? Rachel's asked, any sub-regional thoughts?
So we're currently in discussions with our sub-regional partners through the ICB and looking at what we're doing with the ICB and the 5 boroughs who are part of that Southwest London region and what the opportunities are. But what we're finding is that there seems to be enough interest for people coming up the organisation, and the word is spreading, and people in our shared services with Kingston attend. So we do feel that this is a programme which we will be able to sustain as we move forward, as it is and as it evolves.
Excellent. Well, thank you both so much for sharing. It's been fantastic. And thank you to everyone else for participating in the conversation as well. So I believe that's all we've got time for today. So yeah, thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your weeks, and see you soon.